Second, don't you?
Yes, it does.
I'd like to call to order the May meeting of the Mayor and City Council in the City of Taneytown. Ask Councilman Wentz to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. A lot on the agenda tonight, so we'll get right into it, but I'm going to kind of shift things around a little bit to get started. First thing I want to do, though, is to get approval of the minutes for April 4th and April 9th regular meetings. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. So carried. I ask the council again this evening if there is any conflicts of interest with any items appearing on the agenda.
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right. Before we get into the resolution, ordinances, and agreements, though, I want to take an item from new business, the donations to the fire company, and move that to the head of the list. Each year, the city of Taneytown donates money to the fire company for the services they provide us, services that are critical, that are essential, that are a must for our town. And I just want to express our gratitude for the dedication and the service that the fire company has provided the citizens of Taneytown and the surrounding areas for many, many, many years. We're meeting in the original firehouse, I guess, that goes back to 1903, and it's an amazing thing to think back that for over 100 years that volunteers have been keeping us safe, have been keeping us protected from these kinds of terrible tragedies such as fire and medical emergencies. You know, there's much talk in the press these days about whether volunteer fire companies will continue as they are. I certainly hope they do. It's certainly a testimony to the spirit of what it means to live in a small town in a rural community, and quite frankly, in America. You know, this whole nation has been built on volunteers. This town couldn't function without volunteers. And it's a great privilege to ask Jim Parker to come forward and accept this check for $25,000 to the fire company. Let me get rid of this rope here.
I agree with that.
I don't want to look like we're in Berlin or something.
Good point.
Good job.
The record, that's it. Jim's got a meeting, and he might have to leave us, but I'm not planning to leave.
You'll be welcome when you arrive with that check, even if you're
On
late.
behalf of our company, thank the mayor and the city council, and appreciate the support, and we work side by side in protecting our community and citizens. Thank you again.
God bless you guys.
Thank you.
Oops. Caught it.
Tied up in my wire. Okay, our first item for introduction is Resolution 2018-05, the guidelines for public comment at meetings. We had some discussion Wednesday night about this. Would anyone care to make a motion to introduce this resolution?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I just would like to say that I've been very discouraged with the county commissioners for adopting a stiff attitude about public comment. You can't, when I went in to testify on the tipping fee, there's big giant signs, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. I hope the council will be sensitive to the fact that this should be a welcoming place for public comment.
Thank you. Anybody else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Opposed.
All right, that'll be available for adoption next month. Now, I guess I have a question on protocol for these next items, Counselor. We have an item to consider, and that is the funding of the Bollinger Park and the gazebo, carrying the money that we have set aside this year and didn't spend with the additional funds needed to complete these projects. And we have two versions of the budget before us. So I guess before we can adopt the budget, we need to decide what we're going to do with the park business. Is that correct? Or can we do it with, and then just
I'd make a motion that we do change the agenda to bring that discussion before the vote on this, with whether which one is going to be discussed. It seemed to me when I reviewed this for this meeting that these items should be before the adoption. And I agree with you, Mr. Mayor.
As far as what's before you this evening with the hard copies for the budget, one version includes the park capital that was budgeted for the current year and carries it into FY19. The other one is basically what you've already looked at that does not carry that park balance forward. There was, in the previous version, there was an omission of the dollar amount from the fund balance that was needed to balance the budget, and that has been corrected. It wasn't typed in the right cell on the last hard copy of the budget you had. So one version is basically what you looked at the hearing, just with that fund balance amount corrected, and the other version has the park capital carried over to next year.
And that's known as the B version, right? Okay.
So if you want to do something, some monies in addition to that, then we need to make further corrections.
So the easiest way to do this is debate whether you want to do the A version or the B version. And just, that's the budget you vote on. If you want to do the parks the way it's talked about here, you do the B version and you carry it forward. And that takes care of your operating budget. When you get to your capital budget, if you want to do additional money, because it's a capital project out of reserves, you can then talk about amending the capital budget, and you can just tell us what you want to amend it to.
Okay, well, that's explained. That's answers my question. So let's, who would like to make any comments regarding this version of the budget, A or B version?
Well, I'm encouraged to see a B version come out since we first met at the hearing and include these monies. For many years, we've been talking about developing the Bollinger Park, and I think it's time to do that. Also very encouraged at the new improvements of Memorial Park. And I'm discouraged that our budget before us has a tax increase above the constant yield rate and doesn't give us a discount in our water rate. Last year we got 5% on water and sewer in election year. So before you adopt the B version, I'd like to make a motion to carry that 5% decrease on into this current year. There was $2 million set aside in an earlier vote into restricted funds because I believe that if we'd gotten our questions answered on how many hookups for $14,400 had occurred, if we had those answers by today, I think there would be the revenues to support that. So I'd make that in the form of a motion.
Care to second that motion?
Mr. Mayor, can he repeat the motion?
I move that, since I think what we're doing on the Court of Order.
Councilman Frazier, if you can just, the motion itself and not all the extra fluff, because that's what's confusing us a little bit.
It's not fluff. It's not
I
flood.
think, Councilman Frazier, tell me if this is wrong. You made a motion to move the B version forward with a 5% reduction in the sewer fees,
That's correct, instead of keeping them the
And-
same. Because I think what you're doing, on a
reducing the
point of
tax
order,
rate.
is you're moving 01, 2015, 02, 2018, 03, 2018, and 4, all as one motion.
No.
Or we're
No,
doing-
we were
we're
going to
doing them
do
all
them
separately.
individually.
Okay, so before us is just the operating budget. I think that you have to reflect that in the operating budget. So yes, that's correct. That we, instead of holding the water rate the same, I think there is revenue, if you look at the entire picture of our standing financially, to extend the 5% decrease into the next year. So I'd like to move that the budget be amended for us in the B version to give us a 5% water and sewer rate reduction. And I'd like to make that in the form of a motion.
Is there a second for that motion? Hearing none, the motion will fail. Is there a counter motion or an additional motion to be made regarding ordinance 01, 2018 fiscal operating year budget?
I make a motion that we approve the budget with park capital.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Yes, there is something that I want to speak about directly that Councilman Frazier referenced. We're maintaining water and sewer rates. They're not going up. The money that we have accumulated through them are going to go to capital improvement projects such as a sewage belt press. That way we don't have to raise the rates. By having lowered them last year and keeping them the same this year, we're able to afford important expenditures, and these are not going to have to come out of the pockets of taxpayers.
Who seconded your motion to move this without a water rate reduction?
I did, Councilman Frazier.
That's right.
I think the important thing is we're avoiding going into further debt by being able to pay this out of the bank instead of continuing to borrow money. That's really the most important thing here, is we're able to manage it. It's becoming self-sufficient, and that's the most important part.
May I say one more thing before you call the question on this vote? I had brought up in an earlier discussion of the capital budget when our treasurer was here that a large capital debt is going to be paid off in the next 6 months. It will take about $500,000 worth of payments, if I recall the numbers correctly, out of our burden. I think there's more than enough room to provide rate relief at this time for this need for middle-class families.
Well, I think that goes along with the idea of having a no-growth budget. We can't budget this in anticipation of what might happen in 6 months. That's something we take into account next year for that budget. We say, well, now these funds have freed up. That'll enable us to do this. We hope, we think we should pay this off in 6 months if that's what the actual time period is, but that's midway through this budget cycle. You can't budget an entire year based on something that may happen in 6 months from now. You're halfway through the year at that point.
Would it be okay to just respond to that?
Sure.
This is not a guess. We're paying off a substantial debt in the water and sewer fund, which is going to make the monies available to give relief to taxpayers.
But we can't start spending that money until we know that it is available, until it's
It
physically
will
in
be
our
this-
hands.
in this
Like,
fiscal year.
There's a difference between will be and is. If everything goes perfectly, you're right, it will be. But we can't plan for that.
Be aware that our budget also requires us to draw into reserves by a substantial amount in order to balance the budget. And the worst case scenario, if indeed the major debt is paid off, which I'm sure it will be, that will simply go to fortify our reserves,
If we choose to do so.
if we choose to do so.
That's correct.
All right, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Opposed.
Okay. Next, we have ordinance 02, 2018, the fiscal year tax rate. This is the constant yield tax rate that we will keep the property tax rate at the same level as we currently have, providing a few more dollars worth of income to accommodate new growth and increased expenses, operating expenses. I think we'd care to make a motion to approve the tax rate.
So moved.
Or second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yes, I'm disappointed that we did not hold the same revenue level. By keeping the tax rate the same with the increase in assessments, the town gets a windfall, and they get that amount. And I'm certain that a careful line-by-line reduction with zero-based budgeting, we could come up with the amount that we actually could not raise taxes. But by leaving the rate the same, this is a game that's been played since I was a teenager. The assessments go up one year, then the rate goes up the next year, and the government is always getting a little bigger slice of personal income.
Do you understand that cost of operating a business, whether it's a city business or any business, goes up year after year? Very rarely do costs go down for operating a business. And in order to keep pace with this growth, new revenues are needed just to pay the bills, not just to stay even, not to expand our operations or spend more money, but just to be able to pay for what we've done in the past. And that's the advantage of keeping the tax rate the same, because assessments haven't gone up. What's caused the surplus, or the few $1,000s surplus, and it's very minuscule, 0.6%, is that new growth has occurred. And those new taxpayers are helping fund the services that they're using that they weren't using before. And that'll cost the other citizens more money. So we try to avoid having the residents that have lived here for a number of years pay for the services that the new residents are now getting. So that's why we have to have more funds. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
I'm
So
opposed to
carried.
that. I promised that I would not raise taxes when I ran for office.
Well, yeah, not even gonna.
And we haven't. That's the beauty part about it. Ordinance 03-2018, the order fiscal year 2018-19 water sewer rate, proposes that the water sewer rates remain the same as they did from the previous year. Does anyone care to make a motion to approve that ordinance?
I move that we reduce the water and sewer rate by 5%. I've explained that if we were able to get the answer to how many hookups for $14,400 were collected, and you'd answer the question, what happened to the $2 million that Joe made a motion to put in sequestered funds a couple months ago,
All right, is there a second to
we'd
that
be
motion?
able to do that. So I make a motion
I
that
will
we
make a
reduce the water.
motion that was never made.
There's a motion on the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Did she just make a
Did he-
motion to
did he-
reduce the?
He made a motion, we just need to.
We need a second if we
Oh,
can.
to that.
Do we have a second? Hearing none, now I'll turn this, an alternative motion. Now you can make a motion, Diane.
Okay, on ordinance 03-2018, water and sewer ration, I move that the water rates remain the same.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, two very brief points. Again, I want to remind everybody that unexpected growth and the revenue that's come in from unexpected growth are going to go to pay for important capital projects, which means that water and sewer rates don't have to be raised. That's number one. The second thing that I want to, we're talking about hookup fees. It was predicted by, certain individuals last year that we were going to experience 50+ new houses and growth in a certain development, and we ended up with 0 homes being built in that development. So to the mayor's point and to Councilman Wance's point, you cannot assume you're going to have money that you don't have, especially, if it doesn't manifest.
You'd have to be blind not to see the growth in the new houses being built in town.
And Councilman, you made the exact same argument last year and we had 0 growth in that particular development.
I do not believe you that we had 0 growth. The traffic is more, the new homes are more. It's all around my house.
The time to debate this kind of stuff is in our budget sessions. It's not at a council meeting on the day we're passing the budget. We had all the time in the world to spend discussing this during our retreat and during our budget workshop sessions. That's when all this should have been worked out. Everybody seems to be on the same page, Don, except for you. Now, I understand you would like to lower the tax rate. So would I. Nothing would please me more to be able to cut the tax rates. But the fact remains is, costs continue to go up. The fact that we're not raising the water sewer rates is actually an indication that we're giving a discount on the water and sewer rates, because there's more demand. The cost of doing the product, of delivering the product is more. We've got a $13,000 bid that we're going to approve here in a few minutes for helping maintain the wastewater treatment plant. And it just simply costs more money to do business. You can't stagnate. If you stagnate, you die. All those in favor of Ordinance 03, 2018, fiscal year 2018-19, water sewer rates, say aye.
Aye.
Those
Opposed
opposed?
to that. You can do much better than that for citizens of Taneytown, much better than that.
All right. Next is Ordinance 04, 2018 fiscal year capital budget. This would be where we would add additional funds if we wanted to fully develop the park system. One comment on that. My goal is to get these two projects off and moving. The letter we received from our recreation director cautioned against spending that fund down. Well, we don't have to spend the fund down, but I think if we allocate the funds, it'll keep this on the front burner. And if we have to phase the project, something less than what we anticipate, we can do that. And it would be my suggestion to fund the projects as requested, and then phase them in based on what we think we can afford. If we don't spend it this year, we'll do the same thing next year. So I'd like a motion to,
Well, I'll make that motion that in the capital budget 04, 2018, that we fully fund the Bollinger Park and the gazebo first phases in full, because I know that they will come to us in phases. They were quoted in phases, and we will not see the drain on the budget until late in this fiscal year.
okay,
So I make that motion.
is there a second?
I will second it.
Is there any further discussion?
Yes. If we just fund one, say Bollinger Park, don't we have a better chance of completing it sooner than if we fund both of these things and phase them and they go slower?
Yes,
I don't believe so,
yes, I believe.
because of the way they
That's
were.
what I would prefer to see.
Astronomy people are asking for the first phase to be done.
Don, I'm talking.
Wait a minute, let Diane finish.
The mayor and I sit on the Main Street Council, and one of the things that we stress all the time is to pick a project and see it through to fruition, instead of trying to bite off all of these little pieces and not getting anything done. I would like to see us take the one that's been hanging the longest, Bollinger Park, fund it, move ahead, and get it completed, rather than try to fund both of them.
The only comment that I would have on that is that I think that if we move it to the back burner, that's where it'll stay, on the back burner. I think by funding both projects, we have it on the front burner. Our decision to move forward with one project or the other, one phase or the other, in my opinion, the Bollinger Park proposal could be broken up into 2 or 3 phases, as it is there now. And the most expensive portion of that phase is that observatory, which, quite frankly, is the newest thing on the agenda.
We might lose it if we don't move forward.
Well, I
But
would
it's
love to
part
have.
of Bollinger Park.
I'd love to have the observatory at Bollinger Park, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is if we have to phase things in, we probably should start at the least cost and move to the highest cost. That would be the way to get things accomplished. And because, and this may sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm not. The park impact fee is funded by development.
That's right.
We are on the cusp of a lot of new development. We got 50 more houses in Meadowbrook. We've got 300 and some houses in Meads Crossing, and we've even talked about up to 500 houses at Sewell's. So that is money that's going to come in to replenish this account
That's right.
many times over. And my suggestion is that by having both of these on the book, I'll be able to, and I intend to, make sure that they're on the agenda every single month until these things get going. That's a promise that I'll make to you. What happens is we talk about these 1 month and say, oh, well, I'll get back to you. Then 6 months later, we talk about it again.
But here's the great news.
That's not going to happen.
Here's the great news. We have a motion and second to do just that on the floor, and I just encourage my peers to not retreat from last year's commitment to develop Bollinger Park and to approve the motion before us.
Folks have waited a long time for both these projects, and we owe it to them. We really do.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I can speak to that, if we want to look at which project or both project, we can't say, well, let's do the least expensive first, it'll definitely get done. Let's look at what's going to have the largest impact on the community. Bollinger Park will have a larger impact than a gazebo in the middle of Memorial Park. My concern with Bollinger Park on the plan here is that it contradicts what we agreed to with the county bike and pedestrian master plan. We specified that Bollinger Park trail system would be a paved trail. It's in the county master plan. This is a mulch walking path. I think we need to insist that it be paved so that it can actually be usable more throughout the year. Mulch paths turn to mud.
I don't ever recall talking about a paved walking path there.
The county might have.
Honest to goodness, I have been opposed to that from the very first day.
Okay, well, this came, I'm sorry?
I just recall it was supposed to be a very natural park.
Well, and I mean, natural is one thing, but you also have to look at use. But this came from our working with the county, and Jim, you can speak to this, because when it came before Planning Commission, I asked the question, did all of the Taneytown department heads look at this? And they had, and they agreed to what was on here. So I was excited to see that we were going to do a paved walking path. That's my concern.
Well,
Jim, is that
regardless, the part of the major part of this problem is we've not been able to create a development plan for this park. That's what this money is going to do. Whatever form it takes, paved or unpaved, and I'll do my darndest to prevent it from being paved. But whatever we need to do, we need to fund these projects so we can move forward and do something. If we don't, if we put them on the back burner, we don't fund them, it'll be this time next year we'll be talking about the same daggone thing.
And that's what I fear. We have an opportunity before us to get that planning work done and open up that lane that the astronomy folks have been seeking and grade that site so they can begin their work. We have a partnership built over many months in Recs and Parks to try to get this installed. So I encourage those that doubt it to join Councilwoman Fuller and I and just make that commitment for the 2019 budget.
The way that I look at this is that, by funding the projects doesn't mean that, we don't get to a point where we decide, okay, well, we have to prioritize which one to go with at this point. Instead of saying we only fund one and not the other, and then we get to a place where we say, oh, well, we could have funded both, or, we shouldn't have funded any.
You're exactly
But just by funding both of them doesn't mean we have to go at both of them at exactly the same time, at exactly the same speed.
in agreement. That is a
That's my
second
thought exactly.
look that is available at a later time.
I'm getting a little confused here as we just had the discussion of, we can't start spending money that, might become available in 6 months, and yet we're talking about, well, we're going to have growth, we're going to be able to
disagree with
afford
you on
this.
that.
Hold on.
We know
Councilman.
Not a guess.
What I said. Not what
My
I said at
understanding
all.
is
There
there was talk
are funds
of-
available now,
Okay.
and
But my
they've
understanding
been
from,
sitting there for years and years and years and years while we've been talking about this. And that's all we've done is talk about it. Now, it probably wasn't prudent to develop a new park system during the height of the recession, but we're past that. We've got a lot of growth planned. We've got a lot of new people coming to town. We've got a lot of people here that have been waiting for that for years and years and years. We owe it to our citizens and those who will be our citizens to move forward by funding these projects. I really, really believe that. So I'll call for the question. Gulp.
Wait, could we remind me of what the motion
Yeah,
was? I'm
where
sorry.
are we
The
now?
motion was that we fully fund
These projects.
the two projects, the gazebo project and the park project,
In conjunction with the capital budget?
in conjunction with the capital
Yes,
budget.
Oh,
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good job.
All right, next is an easy one, I hope.
Yes.
Resolution 2018-06, the water allocation for May. Anyone care to make a motion to approve the water allocation for May?
So moved.
Is there a second?
second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you.
The acting city
Well,
manager.
Acting City Manager Wyprek, do you have anything further for us tonight?
Nothing to add tonight.
Anybody have any questions for Jim tonight? All right, any questions arise on the departmental reports? Okay, moving into the legal report. Do you have anything additional for us?
Nothing further?
All right. Well, the next one is another easy one. New tech, information and technology position. We've given some thought, I'm sure, about that since last Wednesday. Does anybody have any particular desire to form a committee to discuss this further, or just move along as we have intended from the beginning?
Mr. Mayor, I think we should explore it further and get a little more information on what we should do as a city.
Does anyone care to second that? Is that a motion?
That is a motion, sir.
I'll second for the discussion.
All right, let's discuss it.
Sure decide.
Can you make the case why we should move forward? Since it's your motion?
Recall that we approved additional funding to provide help in the IT department. Let's give you a brief history for those of you in the attendance tonight. There was a suggestion from Councilman Wance, I believe back in the April meeting, that said, well, why don't we make this position focus on social media, websites and Facebooks and Twitters and alike.
Not exclusively, Mr. Mayor, but please continue.
Well, anybody is able to certainly add anything more from my comments. And at first glance, I thought, well, that might be a good idea to look at that a little bit more. I wasn't really sure about it. I'm not super enthusiastic about it anyway, but nevertheless, I would like to hear what the council thinks about it. If there seemed to be some positive comments when the comment was originally made, but we've had 45 days to think about it. And if we don't need to discuss it anymore, we can move forward. If we would like to discuss it some more, I'll appoint a committee of 3 people to discuss it and give us a report back in June. So, anybody like to add to that?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I would like to add to that. When I brought it up, I outlined, based on information we were given, on how the IT department spends their time, and is a very busy department. But as opposed to trying to spread all of those duties among multiple people, coming from more of a corporate world, you departmentalize instead of spreading thinner. And the idea was to have the communications coordinator who is focused on all the things that go out to the community, whether it be social media, the website, the video production, currently the digital sign at Memorial Park, of which there could be more in the future, photography, different marketing things. And one of the things that brought that up was in the economic development budget, there's $15,000 for marketing initiative that could be done in-house instead of to a contractor who we have to continually explain these things to. I think anyone who would encourage transparency and community engagement would support this position. You know, this is something we do to get information to the people better, faster, more reliably, as opposed to, you know, adding an IT person who all these duties are going to be shared among 2 people now. So will things get put up twice? Will the same information be put up consistently? I highly doubt it. What we're looking at here is something that's going to benefit the people more directly. Information will come out to them in a much more efficient manner. And you're looking at cities across the United States who are putting in communications plans, entire strategies of how they communicate with their citizens. And here, for some reason, we're putting up a wall there of, well, we don't need someone dedicated communicating. Yeah, people can get the information they want. If you dig deep enough, you could find whatever you want. But that's not how we reliably give information to our citizens, where we want them to be aware of what's going on. So, Mr. Mayor, I think it's important that we start taking a more proactive role in communication with the people and look more into this position instead of adding another IT person. By what I was looking at here and what I proposed, it would take at least 50+ hours out of the IT department's duties right now, based on what they gave us. It would be a relief to what they do. If they're spending 190 hours doing their job now, according to the hours spent in the month we were reported, that takes 56 hours away. That's a relief. And there are a lot more things that can happen in this city, whether it's working with parks, economic development, whoever else on marketing strategies to get these events out there, to make people aware of situations going on in the city, whether it's a water main break, things like that. Every department would benefit, and every single citizen would benefit from having this information presented to them faster and better.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
On the, we were given the A and the B drafts in an email about a day or 2 ago. And on the fiscal year 19 revenues operating budget, there's a 0. And then on the expenditures operating budget request, it says $146,683. How much of that is salary and how much is it as other costs for this department in the budget that was just enacted?
We budgeted for this position, and it's in the budget. I would have to leaf through it to find. Does anybody recall that number? But
I was going to ask a follow-up whether there was a pay change for Mr. Dennis in the budget, because I thought I had seen that there was
I think he retained his current salary, and then there was an additional salary for this person.
Okay, there's some confusion. People talked to me, said, "Is that a big pay increase?" And I said, "No, I don't think it's payroll. I think this 146,683 must include a second position and some program costs." But I just wanted to get clarity on that.
Well, again, the budget we passed included a salary for the second position.
Well, after...
What complexion that second position takes is what we're discussing. I mean,
well, after the discussion on Wednesday, I came home and I thought to myself, why in the world are we doing this if the majority of the council is not in favor of this? So I'd caution you to go forward in the area of the motions on the floor.
Well, is there a counterpoint to Councilman Wance's comments?
Not exactly a counterpoint to what he said, to how maybe we go about doing this. I don't think there's anybody up here who would not, prefer better engagement with citizens. Nobody disagrees with that point whatsoever. There's nobody up here who wants to obfuscate the actions and activities of government. The concern that I have about it at this particular time, and I do not think that a communications coordinator is a bad idea, but listening to, our staff over the course of the past month, they're in need of another IT position. I have no problem if we were to create a committee to explore the idea of an additional new position for communications coordinator, but they are certainly in need of somebody who can help out with IT, specifically with IT. So if you want to go ahead and form a committee and we explore a communications coordinator as an entirely new position while going ahead right now with the IT position that the staff have requested to be able to do their jobs better, I'm okay with that. That's kind of a middle road between the two positions here. It's almost like a compromise in a way.
Can I ask a point of order of the parliamentarian? A motion to table can be made on top of a motion in a second?
Yep, it's always in
So
order.
I move we table this and not send it to committee. The preponderance of discussion that we've had in these meetings is that we are not in favor of breaking this up into two pieces as was presented in this motion. And I just move that we table it and not discuss it. We have the ability to move and make adjustments under the current management structure because the funds are allocated. Let the town manager decide how to handle that.
Is there a second for that motion?
Wait, I just need a little bit of understanding. So you're saying go ahead with the budget as it is with the new IT position and then
The
discuss...
budget's already passed.
Well, I'm talking about the new...
4-1.
Yes, but go ahead.
He's simply asking that we table this
whole thing.
discussion.
Completely.
Yeah, I think that since the funds are allocated, the person or persons best equipped to parse the deployment of our staff is our town manager.
And our city
So
manager...
I don't think we ought to micromanage his work from the council because he knows that this staff has been overburdened and it recommended these additional funds.
Well, but then the city...
He did so.
The staff did recommend the new IT position.
And it's in the budget.
Right.
Well, that may be prudent, as much as I hate to say that.
I actually agree with you, Don.
What a great night I'm having.
And the reason I say that is...
Because we're here doing the city manager's job.
Well, that's when I first thought about this was before Henry got sick. That was my idea of the committee, and Henry was going to be one of the members of that committee.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to be able to do that right now. So, and then I was going to select two of you, probably Councilman Lance, and then surprise, surprise, one of your other guys. But it may be prudent just to, I mean, there's nothing that says that 3 months into this new year, we can decide, hey, we really thought about this. We need a social media person. Let's focus this new position on that. I mean, that can be done at the direction of the council. So that would be a time to do that when Henry was recuperated and could give his pros and cons. And
I've heard good news.
I actually agree with that.
About his recovery.
Yeah.
So the motion is to delay conversation.
No, I made a motion to table.
Committee.
Does that require a second?
It requires
Yes.
a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like signs.
I'm opposed.
So carried. Well, I think that's the first, Don. You got two tonight.
I prayed about coming to the meeting
Well,
today.
I'm glad, boy, it's working. That's great.
I don't want to say.
That was, I appreciate that. All right, the next two items we've already handled, so we don't have to talk about those anymore. Financial report. Do I have a motion to approve the financial report?
So, I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The accounts payable, or is a register of the bills that have been paid last month? Anybody have any questions on those?
Questions?
All in favor, say aye.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve.
Second.
All right,
Now,
I'm moving right along.
That's called expedition, isn't it?
That is.
Mr. Mayor, will you take the vote, sir?
you haven't taken.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Donations to the fire company have been accomplished. Acceptance of Meadowbrook Section 4A. We heard the counselor explain to us that they've met the requirements the city outlines for acceptance. Anyone care to make a motion to accept Meadowbrook Section 4A?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Release of Meadowbrook Section.
Mr. Mayor, can we clarify, I'm sorry, were you for or opposed?
I'm agreeing with you all.
Okay, thank you.
I just didn't say anything at the right time, so I.
That's why I was confused. I wanted to make sure that it was
Because I wanted to
corrected.
separate that from the letter of credit in my mind.
Just as a reminder, if a council person fails to make an audible sound on a motion, it counts as a yes vote.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah, I wanted to kind of be like, hey, Aaron. I know there's a lot of effort put into that, getting that right.
Acceptance of Meadowbrook Section A. Release of Meadowbrook Section A letter of credit. Anyone care to make a motion to?
I move that we release it.
There a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion?
I just say that it's the 7th release schedule that started in 2016 and is concluding tonight. And that's a happy thing that we've been able to see everything completed, and congratulations to those that produced this successful report.
If I'm not mistaken, this does not zero everything out, correct? We still have a balance in there.
It zeroes this letter of credit, and we receive a new one that will be for 2 years for the maintenance portion of it.
Okay.
And that's on page 2, number 3.
Okay.
So we'll zero 137 out and add 92 back.
Yep. That's good.
And just a comment to Mr. Hall. It's been reported that you work very well with our city staff, and we appreciate that.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Well, I want to interject if I may, your staff has been a pleasure to work with all the way around. So I can't, Kevin taking over the new position and John and the boys out in the field, they've worked well with White Pine. White Pine did a fantastic job on the construction over there. Getting ready to start Section 5 and Stanball. We're doing that construction. You guys all know the Stanball organization. We have 2 excellent people there who do a good job. So we're looking forward to it and hopefully for a good year. So
Thank you.
congratulate staff and thank you. 2 years from now, we'll be back here.
Well, Wednesday we had the,
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
2 years, we'll be back again for the
As
others.
it spells out in the letter that you have there, we'll
Yes.
work with Jay and get those bonds switched once released, and we replace a 2-year maintenance bond. And hopefully, a year from now, we'll be back here on Section 4B, which doesn't have the top on it yet. We still have a few houses to build there.
All right.
And keep on moving. And I think.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Now, last Wednesday we had the Souls present a plan.
You need to
But
vote.
we need to vote on
I thought we did vote on that.
on the first one. not the second.
Aye.
Just a second.
I don't know. I don't think there's anything on television I want to say tonight.
That's true.
All those in favor of releasing Meadowbrook Section 4A letter of credit, say aye.
Aye.
Now, direction to the staff regarding Sewell annexation. We heard the Sewell's presentation of a proposed over 55 age-restricted community. Well, I assume it's over 55. It's just, you just said it was an age-restricted community. It could be 24 for all I know. But I guess we need to give direction to the staff to proceed further or to not to proceed further. What is the consensus, I guess?
Well, I just want to know why they want to be in town in order to proceed. I guess it's because they want access to our water. Is that right?
Exactly right.
Yes.
Sewer and water.
Mr. Mayor, would you like a motion regarding this or just consensus?
Consensus is needed, or shall we vote?
Do we need a vote?
If you give consensus for the direction of the staff, that would be enough, because then there's no confusion that you actually voted to annex them for
Right,
people.
exactly. Does anyone not have consensus?
I guess I have, did you want to go first?
No, you're fine.
I think I mean, I'm not opposed to new development, but I have some serious concerns with the way the development was presented to us. All right. For that, for Harney Road to, be picking up, the gentleman said between 400 and 500 new units, right? Not having a light there, he talked about how he wanted this development to be, naturally ingratiated into the environment, but then the houses would be, according to that design, right up against the road. He talked about preserving certain, like a natural preserve within that development, but then it's all the way in the back where nobody can see it or get to it except for the people in that community. So I guess, at this particular point in time, I would not be in favor of moving forward with anything given the nature of the plans that we were presented. I just don't think it's right given the setup. I don't think it's right given the time.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak to that as well, because I agree now is not the time, especially with the houses we have already approved between Meadowbrook and Meads Crossing. It's going to be a number of years before we realize the total impact that those developments are going to have on our infrastructure. And I think before we start getting into possibly 400 to 500 more houses, we need to let some of this growth level out a bit, see how our infrastructure is, and then consider it again in the future. I'm just afraid we're going to put too much in the pot at one time and overstretch ourselves to the point where we can't keep up with that growth.
Recall that this is the very first step.
I understand.
And nothing has been approved, nothing will happen until everything takes its due course. And if indeed we find that the time is not right, then we can always stop it. This is a concept that is attractive to me simply from the standpoint that it's a low impact development, age restricted. If it were a 500 unit Meads Crossing, I'd probably have the same feelings you did. But I think that the fact that this is being proposed as a age-restricted community may be worth exploring, at least seeing what they can come up with and see how they can answer our questions, and then we can decide jointly with our planning and zoning administration and us as a council whether this is something we want for our town. But I think if we just say no and throw up our hands for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, we might have a whole different thing out there than what we're having proposed right now. And that's my caution.
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, and certain Councilman Wentz, don't let me step on you if I'm incorrect in saying this. Neither one of us are, vehemently opposed to this. We just don't think this is the right time for it. Because in addition to what Councilman Wentz has, mentioned a minute ago, with the new developments going in now, we're going to need to hire additional police officers. There are a number of things that we're going to have to, be aware of proceeding. So it's, this idea, I have no idea, or I have no problem exploring the idea, but proceeding with, going through all the trouble of annexing property that we may not.
That's not what we're doing. We're not authorizing anybody to proceed with anything. The only thing we're authorizing is further discussions on this development.
Okay, because what was mentioned a minute ago, if I remember correctly, was that we were talking about annexation. And I wanted to make sure that wasn't what we were going to do.
No, that's why we're going with a consensus motion rather than a move to second it.
It'd be helpful if we outline what has to happen so you're clear, everybody's clear about what we're really talking about. So in order for them to develop, if you start with the end and walk backwards, in order for them to build houses, there's a tremendous planning department effort, okay? Plans, preliminary plans, then you have final plans. All of that has to happen before you ever get to a stage where Meadowbrook or Meads Crossing is at this point in time.
Look
Before
how
the-
long Means Crossing's been on the book.
Well, and that's been 10 years to this year. So that takes a significant amount of time when you've said, yes, we want to see the development, we want to have it here, but that's what gives it shape. That's what builds the whole structure. Before you ever get to that point, they have to be annexed into town. Okay, there's no other way for them to build that development, any development, not just that one, without being annexed into town. And you all saw to that when you included them in your growth area. When you included them in their growth area boundary, that meant that they can't put wells and septics out there even if they wanted to have a lower yield, because you have signaled that you wanted that in the town eventually. That's what that meant. So to annex the property, there's a whole process goes on. Aside from the notice, the vote, there's a long waiting period that just of getting the property in the imaginary corporate limits. Before that can happen, what we've done in Taneytown is we like to work everything out first. And so we do an annexation agreement, meaning we negotiate with the property owner about exactly what we want to see, what they're going to bring to us. Now, these are hypotheticals. They might need to bring us a well. They may need to have to agree to road improvements. They might have to agree to a lot of different things in concept, and then we give them certain things in advance. We did that well with the Bean property out at the edge of the town on 140. So that, in my mind, is when you say if the staff is going to move ahead, we're going to spend some time with them working out what would be the best interest of the town, and then come up with this agreement that we would then come back to you and say, are you okay with? And that annexation agreement that you're going to be okay with doesn't annex them either. It just says this is our agreement, and then you begin the annexation process, and then you get to vote yes or no on that. So you see it's a super multi-step process that makes that happen.
I certainly take that point, but, you know, again, my own personal impression, and I apologize, is that, you know, the way it was presented to us the other night, to me, this came out of left field. It seemed like they were ready, they had the plans, they were ready to go ahead with it and move fast. And that was my concern.
And Mr. Mayor, I would agree with Joe on this. If we signal tonight, because the agenda item here is direction to staff regarding the Sewell annexation. So I don't want them to invest a lot of energy to grease the rail for this until Mr. Wance's concerns are taken care of. We need to see some of this growth work out. I don't want to let people in annexation just to get the water we have. I think it's precious.
Well, I guess we don't have consensus then. I mean, that's what it sounds like up here.
I would say then you're going to need to go back to the old school of a motion and a vote to direct staff to proceed or not to proceed, however you want it, positive or negatively.
We just gave you a sense of what we want to do. We don't want to go forward until we do what Councilman Wance said.
Again, the only thing we're
Not
doing
now.
tonight is allowing them to take the next step to talk about what their intentions are. The Sewells have been trying to annex for longer than Means Crossing. And we've rebuffed them over and over again, simply because the first issue was water, and then the second issue was Means Crossings, and there've been a number of issues. And it's not exactly been a rebuff, but it's been, well, the time's not right, the time's not right, the time's not right. That's been our mantra over the years. So this isn't the first time the Sewells have been to us, but it's the first time they've been to us with a concrete proposal with pictures, I guess is what you say. So, I mean, it's.
And we've seen lots of proposals in the past that end up being completely different by the time it comes to fruition. So I
Well,
don't
again,
see any problem with letting, I mean, really, I would love to throw them a bone because they have been very patient over the years. And I remember way back coming to meetings and seeing them come and saying, how about now? And you guys saying, nope, can't do it now.
Yep.
So my
Do
question
you want
is,
to put that in the form of a motion?
Throw them a bone.
I'll second her motion.
All right.
my question, Mr. Mayor, is what's different now? What makes it a good time now that it wasn't then? And you,
Well,
you
the
were here, you can
economy's
speak.
better, first of all. We have the water supply primarily. That's pretty good. They have a pretty substantial well on that property that would certainly enhance our overall system.
I think something just to point out that is different from the last time the Sewells approached the city regarding annexation is the last time what is now going to be Meads Crossing was still an undeveloped 100-acre tract of land with no plans for development. Phase 4 and 5 of Meadowbrook were not recorded. So we had much more raw land that wasn't even into the planning process at that point in time. So since that point, we have had further development in the Creekside subdivision is built out now, which wasn't built out then. Meads Crossing has been approved and is beginning construction, and Meadowbrook has just recorded phase 5 out of 6 phases. So after Meadowbrook and Meads, there's really nothing else in the pipeline in terms of new residential development. So,
and when we had our internal, and I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other, but internally when we talked about it, back then we were overwhelmed. We were under consent order. We didn't know how we were going to provide for the development here. And the concern that we've had when we sit down is, the analogy I brought up is like a farmer. So everything that you see right now is what we planted 10 years ago, and it's starting to be harvested. And once we harvest it, it's done. There's nothing more. And we haven't planted anything new for the future. That if you don't start, that doesn't mean you have to start this year, you can start next year or the year after, but these things take, regardless of what they want you to believe, these things take a tremendous amount of time to make happen. If you don't want to believe me, you can ask the gentleman sitting over there of how long he's been in Taneytown. It predates all of us, maybe not the mayor, is when he started. So the idea with the farmer would be, if you don't start thinking about what you're going to plant next, by the time you need it, it won't happen. And then remember, the reason why our taxes, whether you want to say they've stayed low or how, I don't want to get into that argument, but is because Carol Vista came on board. We were able to afford more because we had more houses that came on board, and you're going to see that again. What's the horizon in 10 years? And that's the planning issue that we've been throwing around, is that what is next?
Well,
Managed growth is the measure of a successful town. And when you fail to manage growth, like we're attempting to here, you begin to die. And again, I'm not a big growth guy, but managed growth is necessary in order to maintain that standard of living and provide the services that everybody has come to expect. And it seems like the proposal that was presented Wednesday night, and again, that could be entirely different when it comes to us for a final vote, but then that's when we can make that decision, yay or nay.
well, when we get to the annexation agreement and discussing that, what restrictions can we put on that agreement? Can we put time restrictions on when they can develop that property?
Yes, and there's some implications of that. Without getting into it, there's the 5-year rule about zoning changes anyway, and so there's timing elements that have to be discussed that you could put in there. Right. We'd have to narrow down what you mean by developing, because again, it takes so long to get things moving.
I understand.
Are they developing or building? But anything can be put in an agreement.
I think if we can prevent it from going in the ground too soon, that we are not ready. Because Meads Crossing is a large development. That's not going to happen in 2 years. It's going to take some time. I think we need to make sure that once the dust settles and it's built and we see the impact it has, then we look at the next step. I'm not saying cut off growth. I just want to make sure that we leave ourselves time to recover from this growth before we take the next step, so we can see exactly what's going to happen.
I don't think best case scenario, you could be ready in 5 years.
Maybe, right.
So in the annexation agreement that we talk about, we could also express concerns such as the number of units or traffic lights or things of that nature, does that take it to a different level? It's not something specified in an
That'll be more
annexation
planning.
agreement.
Part of the planning
It
process.
takes it get to
Traffic
a too
studies and things of that
specific.
nature are all part of the planning process.
For example, we've done
I just don't
this.
want to stumble into something blindly, that's all.
So, I mean, let's look back to what we did, and we did it without really much concern, which again is the Bean property. Okay, so Easy Does It Cafe out that way. And he came to us and wanted to be annexed in. We thought it was a good idea. And he wanted to do age restricted. And we said, you got to give us a concept plan. And that concept plan has to be approved, maybe not in the normal process, but we want to see what you're going to put out there. And in return, if we say yes to that, then we're going to go to the county and say, we need a zoning waiver because this is what they plan to do. And he said age restricted and all the right words that made us do that, which is why the county said, all right. But the county didn't say all right back then. They had a problem with us. But the idea was the county be, all right, you can go ahead and do this. But the county was concerned, again, the water and all that stuff was going on. So we have done this, not on this scale, but there are so many issues that need to be planned. And that's really the issue, I guess. I mean, if just boil it down and take all the nice veneer off, is that this is a big effort. And so if you want all of us to spend our time trying to figure that out and deal with them, just realize that you're tasking us with something that our plates are going to be partly full with. We just can't continue to do it, which is why we didn't do it before. And then there's the issue of cost. There needs to be an agreement right out of the box with the Sewells, if we're going to do this, about how do we deal with the cost. This shouldn't be something the citizens of Taneytown pay for. There needs to be the escrow agreement set up. There needs to be some type of understanding that when they submit things, they get reviewed by our people. There's a reimbursement to the city. All of that stuff needs to be negotiated out from the get-go, and if you guys don't want to do this, which is, I guess, as simple as it gets, is if you're not interested in doing this, then we're not going to waste anybody's time, because it's going to waste our time, their money, and why do it just to kind of placate them? So if you're serious about doing it, we may not come to an agreement, but at least we're serious about doing it. If we're not going to do it anyway, if you think, hey, this isn't something, then let them save their money and save our time and say, we're just not really interested at this point. We've done it before, you know, so.
My reluctance is not on the actual annexation of the property, it's on what's going to come after that. And are we prepared with everything else that's in the pipeline now to handle it? So with that, if we pay very close attention to what restrictions we put on that agreement, then I can agree that we look further into annexation.
And this is primarily exploration, this is not moving ahead with anything.
That's the definition of planned growth. Just to say, sure, we'll annex you, go build some houses there and let us know when they're done, that's not planned growth.
Oh.
But staging it, just like Jay was talking about, step by step by step, and having answers before we move to the next step, is how you plan for growth. It's planning before you harvest. And again, we're are you going to do that or not going to do that? Sooner or later, that parcel of ground will, I mean, it's not going to stay a farm forever. And if we have, it's better that we have our say than if we have to challenge a development agreement in court because they want to build on their own and put mini mansions or something out there. So
I don't want to spend the staff time in developing something that's going to be voted down.
Well,
if they-
we don't
I
know that
agree
it's
with
going to be
what
voted down. We're going to have a new
Councilman
council
Bigliotti
next year.
said, but that kind of load on Harney Road is a serious consideration. I think.
Well, again, traffic studies are part of all of this. If we do our traffic studies and say, you got to build a dual lane highway out there to accommodate that, they'll have to build a dual lane highway out there to accommodate that.
I just don't want to throw a bone and spend all the staff time if that's not going to happen until we get through these
Again,
other commitments we've already made.
We aren't the planners. We aren't the city engineers.
We don't have to spend their salaries, though.
All we're doing is saying, what would we like to see out there someday? It's not going to be Christmas trees, I guarantee you. It's going to be something else.
Can we call the question?
Well, could someone remind me of the,
Judy made the motion to have staff, to direct staff to explore.
Go ahead and explore, yes.
Yes.
explore, strictly exploration?
And I second.
Okay.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed to that. I think it's the wrong time to annex that property.
We're not annexing, didn't say a word about that. All right, thank you. That was a good discussion.
Yeah, it was.
Summer meeting schedule.
We call them off and have vacation.
We had several proposals thrown out on the table
Okay.
last Wednesday. Anybody come up with any better ideas?
Better ideas? Oh, no, I like those ideas.
I liked,
None in July.
I liked the idea of the single meeting in June, and then we take July off as a summer break.
I do too. I like it, because this has been a big meeting. We've gotten a lot of things done. And I don't think that the summer meetings will be that busy. So I think that's a good suggestion, like Councilman Wentz just
Would you like to
said.
make a motion to that effect?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Your second.
Second.
Judy second.
Unless Don wants to.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. You know what we're doing?
So we are going to have a business meeting on the 6th of June, and you realize there'll be no work session before that. So when we talk about issues that day, you'll be voting on them that day, and if you're not comfortable, you'll be postponing them. There will be no meeting July 4th or the 9th, and there'll be no other meeting in June. So the following meeting.
Would it be advisable maybe to get the packet out a couple days earlier?
In
Would
June?
that be possible?
For the June 6th meeting, it usually goes out on June 1st, so you have 4 days still for that.
Is that enough time, or would you like to have it?
Are you going to
6
promise
days?
Claire you're going to read it earlier?
All right, never mind.
So there will be no meeting on June 11th.
Never mind.
Right, nobody liked that, right? No meeting June 11th, no meeting July 4th, no meeting July 9th. Your next meeting will be August 8th and continue on the normal cycle.
So then in June, we will be approving water allocation for June and July.
That's correct.
Right.
All righty.
Just a quick follow-up question. Was that something we really had to vote on?
You haven't done it, vote yet, but I want you to vote on it, yes.
Okay.
Because the charter requires you to meet monthly, and you as a board need to decide that you're doing something different.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have a mowing bid recommendation in our package. We had two bidders submit pricing for mowing our parkland and adjacent land. And our city manager recommends the award to Eckers, I believe.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we award the bid to Eckers Lawn Service.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Yes, this is not the low bidder.
That's right. There's $700 difference between the two.
Yeah, it's a contract that is a monthly contract. So there's an amount that would be lost each month by not going to the low bidder. And what's the cause for not going to the low bidder?
I think the total difference was like $700 based on the
I
analysis.
calculated about $1,140.
Well, looking
That's
at
a lot if you have a $7,000 a month mowing charge.
Right, but when you're looking at things like the hourly for additional cutting, it's still lower with Eckers, as well as we have a great relationship that we've kind of worked on to make sure that we had that good relationship. So I think it's important that we keep it. They've done an amazing job on our parks, and I think it's appropriate that we stick with them so we keep seeing that great work.
Any other discussion?
So Eckers is technically the lowest bid.
No.
No, they're not.
No.
No, the company that's the low bid
What was
is
just
called
mentioned
Beal's
about an
Lawns.
hourly rate, though?
Well, they specify that
There's two
they're,
different parts of the bid.
right.
Well, no, I'm in the discussion, because I was turning pages. I didn't get all that discussion.
Okay, well, I was referring to, there's a quote for hourly for additional requested cutting. And Eckers does come in lower than that. And there's,
Okay.
you know, we can sit here and digest and dissect everything, but I think Henry's recommendation makes sense, and I think it's the best move we can make. So,
Now, Mr. Mayor, I voted against the low bidder on one other project, but I don't often do that. And I don't see any compelling reason not to take the low bidder here.
All right, well, I'll call for the question. You can vote yea or nay. All those in favor of accepting Ecosys, the mower contractor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Opposed to that.
Okay. 4-1. Magnolite bag purchase, or magnesium 100 purchase.
Magnetite?
Magnetite. Light, tight. That's a chemical we used for our wastewater treatment plant to make the water better before we dump it in the creek.
I move we move forward with the procurement of this
Is there a
purchase.
second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. So carried. All right, we're down to council member reports. Councilman Frazier, what would you like to talk about tonight?
I'd like to, again, congratulate the town's cooperation with the American Legion Post, Ashton Snyder Post, Robertsville Road. It is a wonderful thing to see these banners. I had a chance to try to meet the goal of getting one of those banners. I was able to find my grandfather's honorable enlistment. He and two brothers enlisted to go to France, World War I. I brought a copy of the picture of him on the Eiffel Tower, showed it to the commander at the American Legion Post, and I'm a little late to get the banners up because most of the poles are filled, but it also gave me the opportunity.
Next year.
Also gave me the chance to find my own father, who's 91, lives in Vicksburg, his drafting and honorable discharge in 1946. He was on a Liberty ship during the Second World War. I just think it's time to honor the greatest generation, and these people are heroes, and they're local, and they deserve the honor. I just feel wonderful that this project of cooperation is going forward, and we've lifted up them before the community.
Never have heard a bad comment on our banners. I think everybody unanimously has said, I've said from time to time that if you were on the corner and handing out $20 bills, people would complain about it. Well, nobody's complained about this. So I think that we may have hit it somehow. I don't know. Maybe I haven't heard them yet. But that was a good deal. And you notice we were out today straightening them up. The upper arm kind of sagged a little bit after we hung the banners on them, and it was due to the way the machinery was constructed. I guess there was well, you don't need to know that. It was a pin in there that caused it to go down. But anyway, we were getting the wrinkles out of them, so we're even making them look better. How about you, Councilman?
I'd like to talk more about baseball because we're still in that season. Just to let everyone know, thank you for attending. Councilman Vigliotti attended opening day, which was a great success. Commissioner Wance was there and did a lot of the emceeing, and all the teams were well represented. The fields are holding up very well. All the volunteers are still working hard to keep it playable throughout the season. Taneytown Lions Baseball will be having a tournament the first weekend of August, which is going to take up 4 of the fields. We're hoping to have 16 teams come in over that weekend to do a tournament. It'll be a great fundraiser. I think everyone should come out and watch some really, really good 10U baseball. And on a more personal note, I became an uncle again this morning when my brother and his wife gave birth to Paxton Michael Wance this morning. So it's, on a personal note, it's very exciting, and another addition to their fine family.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Diane?
I'm going to let Joe further report, but I had the pleasure of spending the last hours with Taneytown's finest at Dunkin' Donuts for the Relay for Life collection.
Sorry I couldn't be there.
And I will let Joe give you the details of that.
Joe, would you like to give us the details?
Well, members of the Taneytown City Government, including Mayor Pro Tem Foster, myself, and Councilwoman Fuller stopped by for a little while. An effort that was spearheaded by our own Sergeant Justice to collect money for Relay for Life from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Friday, May the 4th, Star Wars Day. Because of the efforts of our wonderful police officers, ourselves, and some students from FSK, we raised $1,193.62.
Outstanding.
That demonstrates just how caring and giving the people of this town really are. The next thing I want to talk about is that this is National Police Week. It was established in 1962 through joint resolution of Congress and President Kennedy to honor all law enforcement officers who have given their lives in the line of duty. So say prayers for them this week and thank officers as always. And then the very last thing I'll say is that, Memorial Day is at the end of this month. Our county has a number of different ceremonies that are hosted. They're definitely worth attending, and it's definitely worth paying your respects. And I thank God for the men and women who serve this country. And that's all for me this month.
Good job. Councilwoman
Yeah,
Fuller.
I don't really have anything from Public Works, but I was going to make mention that as May progresses, you'll see the bunting out on Main Street. If anybody would like some for their own personal property or for their homes, you can either contact Nancy or myself. And we can give you the information. She's able to get that.
The patriotic bunting.
Yeah.
The bunting
Front of
is
City
up
Hall.
across the way, looks very good.
So we've got the opportunity to have it all over town and celebrate.
Right on, that's a good idea too. That's wonderful. Just a quick word about the legislative session that ended June the 9th, or April the 9th. Seems like a year ago now. But we were very successful as the Maryland Municipal League's actions moved forward. We were able to get basically what we wanted for the highway user revenues. And in fact, we even got a little surprise bonus toward the end of the year. You'll notice the fiscal year budget, there were some additional funds added to that original number we had talked about. So very proud of the job that the staff at MML did for us and the cities and towns, the 157 cities and towns throughout the state did to get these funds restored. They'll be partially restored next year, and by year 5, I think they'll be fully restored. So that's a big win for us, and our streets really need it. Just an update on Henry. I talked to him today. He seemed to be pretty good spirits. He's getting along well, and he has his daughter in from Colorado, and his nurse daughter from Colorado is coming in Wednesday, so he'll be in good hands. He'll be back with us before you know it, I predict. And seemed like he was doing all right. Caught him just waking up from a nap. I called him at lunchtime. So that's what you do when you recover from cardiac surgery. You nap a lot. I can tell you that. And finally, this Wednesday is the Carroll County chapter meeting for MML, 16th down at Mount Airy. This is a joint meeting where we join with Frederick County and once a year and have a joint meeting, and it'll be at the fairgrounds in Mount Airy, and encourage, I just remind you all of that, and if anybody needs to carpool, let me know. I'll be happy to accommodate them. And that's all I have. So is there anyone care to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign, thank you. We got a lot of work done tonight.